Hello everyone and welcome back to the Royal Talens Creator Studio Live. My name is Jeff Olson. I am the Art Education Director for Royal Talens North America and I will be your host today. Just a quick reminder, if you like, follow us on Facebook or if you follow us here on Instagram, reside in Canada, US, you will become eligible to win your very own Rembrandt oil set. All right, so we got a great guest with us today. So I just need to see if she is ready to go. Hold on a second. Oh my gosh, we got a ton of you guys out there. Let me see if I can find her. There we go. Nope. Yep. Here she comes. All right. Oh, there we go. We're together. All right, so I was just getting ready to sing your praise here. So born in Russia, she held her first solo exhibition at the age of 14 and was featured in the TV documentary Our Generation, dedicated to finding the 5 most talented teens in Russia. Moving to the US, she became the youngest student admitted to the Otis Art Institute in Los Angeles, where she graduated with honors and then went on to receive her Master's of Fine Arts degree at the Art Center College in Pasadena. Her work is featured in prominent private and public collections, and she was selected to create iconic portraits of Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan for the Music Cares Grammy Foundation. A recipient of numerous awards, including the Alex Award in Visual Arts, presented nationally to honored scholars and artists. She's an art historian and an educator. She worked for over a decade at the Getty Museum, and her scholarly work is dedicated to uncovering new perspectives regarding the life and work of old masters, including Rembrandt and Dürer. She is the co-founder of the nonprofit Project AWE, and they have a mission that's dedicated to exploring connections between Western esotericism and the arts. And if that wasn't enough, guys, she is also the founder of the Z Academy, where she mentors students of all ages based on her unique experiences and the techniques of the old masters for inspiration. Everybody join me in welcoming Zhenya Gershman.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So happy to be here.
So happy to have you. This is fantastic. So some folks may have seen us about a month ago on Facebook. We had a wonderful interview and we looked at a bunch of your work. Today, we're going to have a few questions. Some will be the same, some will be different. But the added treat today is after the questions, you're going to do a demo for us. And I'm super excited by that.
That's right. That's what makes me nervous.
Nothing to be nervous about. You've got this. You've got this for sure. We've already got tons of folks waving and saying hi. So lots of encouragement out there. So let's go ahead and get started. And the question that I always start with is, what's on your palette today?
Okay, I'm going to actually show it to you.
Oh, yay.
Here it is. I don't know if you can see it. But,
yeah, we got it.
I wanted to tell you that it's interesting how the palette is formed. I know that many artists have similar and different ways to arrange it. The way that I've been taught is basically you go back to the creation in the Bible. So you know how in the Bible, in the beginning, you have day and night separated, light and dark.
Yeah.
So you've got the actual creation on your palette, right? So not religious, I'm making a joke, of course, but you start with your whites and you gradually work out to the night. You gradually work out to the dark, and then the warms are on one side. So all of my yellows and ochres and warm reds and browns on one side, and then it transitions to slowly to the purples, blues, and greens.
Sounds perfect to me. So the paints that you're using are Rembrandt, correct?
Let me show you that one.
Yay. Yay. So how did you discover Rembrandt?
So since this is a question that you ask me every time that we meet, I try to tell a different story every time.
Sure.
So this time I'll tell you that I had a teacher at school. I think it was actually in my graduate program at Art Center. And I was painting and I was doing pretty well, but not as well as I could have. And my teacher walked in and said, "Zhenya, let me see your paints." And he looked at my paints and said, "This is trash." And you know,
subtle.
You know the expression, you are what you eat. So basically he said, you are what you paint with, right? So immediately I went to the store and I went to the forbidden section. The forbidden section because we thought of ourselves as students and had a budget, right, on which we would spend, you know, for our art supplies. But what I didn't realize that you actually save by buying more expensive paints, because you could squeeze a cheap paint tube entire red and still not get the result that you can get with one drop of this amazing paint. So that's
that
how
is so true. It is so true. I tell folks that all the time, that often it's more economical to use the more expensive paint because you use so much less of it to get the kind of color that you're looking for, especially if you're mixing a lot of colors, right?
So it'll end up looking like, after about a year, my paint tube is missing a hat and it looks a little bit like this, but it's still totally usable.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I love that. That's an awesome paint too. So is there a feature of the paint that you like, some working property that you find the most enjoyable?
So I have a confession. I don't know about you. Do you do this, Jeff? When I go shopping, I open my oil tubes at the store. I don't know if that's kosher, but that's what I do. And the moment that's the feature that I wanted to share, is that the moment I open the Rembrandt tubes, the colors are so luscious that it almost seduces you into painting. You can't wait to work with it. And then the other thing is that the moment that you squeeze it, it's almost ready to paint with. Other paints you have to massage, to warm them up, to put a lot of medium, to get them ready and plastic and moving. Rembrandt paints are they're like the perfect horse ready to go.
I agree 100%. That's my favorite thing too, is that just the direct painter's paint, no mediums, no thinning the paint out. It's just ready to go. And you can cover so much of the canvas so rapidly with it that way too. I really enjoy that feature. So that's a great one to call out. So is there a particular color or group of colors that you like to work with that you can recommend to folks?
I need a favor. Can I have 3?
Yes, you can have 3.
I just can't choose one favorite color. So the 3, I was thinking, if I was in an island where I was stuck alone and could only have 3 colors, which colors would that be? And my students won't let me lie, because I always like repeating the same, take out your tube of this, and do you have that tube of that? So that would be alizarin crimson, which is your favorite color, and your favorite color to paint with are not the same thing. So alizarin crimson is definitely not my favorite color, but how it mixes and creates the shadows is magical. So alizarin crimson, Van Dyke brown, and Van Dyke brown is so amazing because it can go warm or cool, pasty or translucent. It's just delicious. And then turquoise blue. I can't live without turquoise blue.
Is that a phthalo-based turquoise blue that you like, or
it's this guy. It's actually the one that I showed you, the one that squeezed out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just says take turquoise blue on it.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
that's all it says. So I think it's not phthalo based because it's a little bit more like, if I had, it's almost closer to the white family, because it goes pasty and it doesn't go deep dark. It goes better to highlights, like cool highlights.
Okay. No, that sounds great. You know, I've got to get you to try the permanent matter. Have you tried the permanent matter and compared it to the alizarin?
That sounds beautiful.
Oh, we've got to get you to try that, because the permanent matter in the Rembrandt is very similar to the alizarin, but I think it's deeper
It's a
and
little bit
richer.
more purple, right?
It's warmer for sure. Yeah, but yeah, I guess you could say it a little more purple. It's not quite as that high red, but you should try it and see what you think. There's one that's a light too. Yeah. It may change it could change your world. It could change your world.
Big tube. I'm expecting that big tube in the mail.
All right. So another question on your approach to painting as in regards to the paint application itself. You have a very unique approach. I mean, how would you describe it to folks?
My approach to painting, I would describe it in a very interesting art historical term. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Tango.
Tango.
So you already know that I love.
I should have predicted that.
I love to tango, but I want to explain what I mean, because I'm dead serious. I'm not smiling anymore. Tango is about 2 people coming together as one. So everything in painting for me is about coming together, joining things. So whether it is the painter and the model, the painter, the model, and the viewer, the painter, the model, the viewer, and the painting coming together, or things that you're painting. So I'll give you an example. For instance, when you look at Vermeer painting and you look and you think it's so detailed, it's an illusion. If you look at the skirt and the basket and the wall and all these details, the only times he puts in the details is when two objects come in contact. It's when the contact happens, that's when the interest happens. So for me, the overall approach is, how is something part of everything else?
That's right. That emphasis on the edge, huh? In your eye kind of looks for that, you know, when things are blended, you know, it often refers to reflections or sky because your eye just kind of travels through it. But as soon as it hits that edge, you stop, and our eye, that's like the reading part of our brain. It wants to assign meaning to that abrupt edge. And so that's why edges, I think, are so important.
And it's on a technical and philosophical level, because if you
Yes.
look at any mystical philosophical tradition, from anything, from Buddhism, from Sufi, from Kabbalah, from any, you know, religious mystical movements, it's about how is one part of something else. So it's,
Yes.
it's on this kind of different level of approach that I think makes meaning into our life.
Right, right. Speaking to your technique, especially the linear aspects of it, the hatching and those things, how does that for you help to express what you're trying to say through the subject matter?
Okay, so that's actually really interesting, because when I use the tool, there are two ways to use your tools. There's one to brush, and actually I love etymology. So last night, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I looked up what etymology of the brush is. Have you
And what
done
is
that?
it? I have not. No.
I know, I love it when we use our whole life like a tool, and we call ourselves an artist. And then like one day I said, what does artist
So
mean?
the word brush itself.
What is a brush? It's actually a bunch of twigs held into a stick. So it literally symbolizes a brush or broom. Huh. So what we do is we sweep. We're sweepers.
We're sweepy. We're sweepers.
We're sweepers. We're glorified sweepers. But I thought it was so great of a metaphor, because I think about painting almost as an excavation of the soul, because what I do is portraiture, right? So not looking at the surface, I'm looking something a deep beyond. And if you imagine that you are in some excavation site still in Greece, you can go and excavate forgotten cities, right? And you're just brushing away the layers of the dust to reveal the object underneath, right? So one way is to very gently, almost you have to be caressing. It's not a rough motion, right? It's a brushing, that soft, caressing way that you develop a relationship between the object that you're making, very loving, gentle, sensuous process, right? The other way is the tool that you're talking about, which helps another level of excavation, and it's much more abrupt because it has a tooth, and I'm actually digging into the paint and removing the paint. So it's another level of a much more invasive excavation. And when you combine the two, the effect is really, really stunning.
I agree. I love those tools. I use them as well. And palette knife, you can do the same kind of scraping and layering that I find really engaging as well. Not just the process, but viewing paint like that. Yep, there it is. By Princeton. Shout out to Princeton Brush Company, the Catalyst tools.
The only brush I used, as it turns out, as you taught me. I didn't even know, but that's my to-go brush.
Oh, that's great. You know, I learned something today, and maybe you knew this already, that flat brushes or the hard edge brushes didn't come out into use by artists until the Victorian era. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Before that, they all used round and mop brushes. Yeah, so the whole idea of a flat brush or a bright with a sharp edge cut off like that, those brushes didn't start being used until the Victorian era. And
what's the reason? How did it?
I don't know. What you know, it's about the same time as we start evolving into Impressionism in the late 19th century, and I think there may have been something to do with the new way of looking at painting and the new way they wanted to create surfaces to get away from realistic or perceived realistic representation, the old glazing techniques, right?
How in the world did they do edges?
Well, we're going to have to look that up and find out. Look at Rembrandt's brushes and see what he did to get all those surfaces.
You know how you load the flat brush,
yeah.
You touch it, and you've got a line, right?
I mean, that's almost all I use are like filberts and flats. I very rarely use round brushes. So to deal with it, yeah, I thought that was so interesting.
That is a cool fact.
Yeah, It is. It's fun facts all through art history. That's why art history is so wonderful. It's just never ending.
Well, my broom is flat.
Yep. Yep. I know. My broom is flat too. All right. So you're a teacher, a fantastic teacher and mentor. So what is it that you hope to instill in your students above all else?
So I think there's always a question who we are, why we're here, what is our purpose. And there was one man, as you know, Descartes, who tried to distill it, and he went around asking questions, what is it all for, right? And he came up with the famous statement, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
So for me, the answer is clear. I think, therefore I am. So when I teach, the way I think about a job, it's not painting. Painting is not when you're moving, we joke about the broomstick, right? Our brush stick, but it is a way of living. It is a way of looking. It is a way of collecting information. It is a way of relating to people. We're constantly painting. I mean, you'll notice a painter in the street when they just start staring, right? And they're painting in their mind. So I instill it in my students. I think it's extremely important that once you call yourself an artist, your job never ends. And it's not just when you paint, it's for the rest of your life, in every moment you take a breath.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't agree more. It does. It's something about that early conditioning that we go through in terms of learning to see, and then you start to see the world differently, not just the plastic qualities, but the inert physical qualities of the world. Yeah. That's a great comment for sure. This is a question I asked you last time, and it has to be with your perspective as an art historian and how that informs your work as a painter.
So you know how much I love my mom, so I'm going to quote my mom again, but in a new way. Mom, when you're watching, you'll enjoy it. She's actually busy doing her acupuncture right now, but she once told me, you know, we were looking at beautiful paintings together, catalogs of art, and she said, Zhenya, isn't it interesting that in time, what is art history? Time gives us a point of view, right? A removed point of view. So those who were very famous in our time sometimes are no longer, we don't even remember the names. Those who were forgotten all of a sudden are Van Goghs and Vivaldis, right? So she said something very interesting. She said, great art is like wine. It only gets better. The bad art turns into vinegar. So art history is a way, it's an advantage of looking. It gives me a perspective. It gives me a larger vantage point to see, if you will, what's good and what's bad. What is at my disposal? Who am I want to be? How I want to teach my students. I also love the fact that art history breaks the concept of time. It really is. If you want to time travel, you can go to any direction and talk to any artist, whether it's in the past or in the future, because you're making the art that will outlive you. So it's an amazing tool. And how I love to teach, I think it's very boring to start learning to paint with a sphere. I start to teach my students, my first lesson is to learn from Vermeer, to learn from Rembrandt, right? Let's start from the best. So that opens a conversation that is so incredible. We don't copy. That's not the point. I would make a lousy forger, right? That would not be a career for me. But we ask questions. How did you paint that nose? Vermeer, please tell me. And they do. So art history for me is a door to conversation, a time travel, and to understand really what matters.
All right. That's a fantastic response, and I couldn't agree more. I like the concept of having that conversation with folks, and I also like the idea of being part of a continuous dialogue, right? That you're part of these things that have been going on. This conversation has been going on for centuries, and how can you continue it forward if you haven't spent time talking to the folks before you? Yeah.
My favorite part of the Rembrandt paint is that it makes you feel like you're Rembrandt. Because it says
the Dutch are very proud of their history. That's right. They're very proud of their art history, for sure. All right, so that's enough for my questions, because I want to leave enough time for you to go through the demonstration that you have set up for us, because I know everybody's going to really enjoy that. So it's all yours. I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you got to switch cameras and positions, so.
I gotta pin up my hair and put on my apron. So 1 second.
Okay.
Just get to work, right?
Get to work.
And I've never been more proud since when you
That's
sent
right.
me
Yay!
my apron.
Next time I see it, it has to look more like this one, though.
My grandma once walked in when I was 11 years old, and my room looked like a mess. And she said, Zhenya, why does it look so messy in your room? And I said, Grandma, I'm an artist. I'm a bohemian. And she said, why don't you try to be a clean bohemian? So ever since then. All right, I'm going to switch over.
You're very organized, bohemian. I am too. There we go.
All right,
Looks
so
good.
let's see. I'm going to adjust just a little because what happens since we're sharing the screen, you see a little bit less than what I have expected, but nevertheless, I'm also going to show you what I'm going to be painting. I was hoping that would fit into the screen a little bit, but I'll just show it to you.
Okay.
So this is actually a photograph of my friend, of a brilliant painter himself, and because he was painting, he was mostly a draftsman, but not a painter at the time. And he wanted to get some of my ideas about painting. He said, why don't I come model for your class? And that way I can hear how you teach. So that's how I got him to model. And this is amazing eye. This is a beautiful close-up. So I'm going to be talking to you about painting the eye and the to do or not to do. So one thing that how people go wrong thinking about the eye, and most of the demonstrations that I see, is they really think about the eye as the opening here, right? But the eye is the entire orbit, the structural skeleton framework, and then the orbicularis oculi, the muscle that attaches in a round pattern. And the actual opening of the eye is tiny. It's maybe what? It's like 15% of that entire space. So I'd like to show first how I begin from a large shape of the skeleton and move in so that the eye feels like it belongs in place. I would like to also show how not to paint the white of the eye. So with the white of the eye, language holds us back, the white of the eye, but it's never white. So if I actually put something white here, you could right away see that it has to be kind of a blue, gray, dark value. And I'll show some of the do's and don'ts of that. I'll also show how not to outline the iris and the pupil so it doesn't look cartoony, and a little magic trick for the highlight of the eye. So all these yummy things. And one of the other things that I love, how to make the eye look teary with that little kind of a watery effect and the warm corner of the tear duct. So that's my plan. Does it sound okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, wish me luck. Sounds good on paper, huh? All right, so I'll try. Tell me that if you don't see, I'm going to move the eye a little bit so you won't see as much as what.
Yeah.
What
I think if we can see what you're doing more than the example, that'd be great.
Exactly. So I'm opening my turpentine because that's what I need, and I also love my. I don't know if you use this, but I use poppy seed oil.
Mm-hmm.
Poppy seed oil because it has a beautiful drying time. It doesn't take too long or too fast. It's just right. Maybe about a week to dry. And if you look at the bottom, do you see how translucent it is? So it's less yellow than linseed oil.
Yes.
It gives you the true color of paint, and it's not too shiny. I actually don't like the paint to look like an old master, right? I don't like it to be like fake looking a little bit. I want it to be modern.
Yeah, all that varnish
right?
up on top of it, yeah.
All right, let me start making a little bit of a mess. I'm using my Princeton brush. It's a flat and it's size 8. So size 8, just to give you perspective, I don't know where my camera is. Okay, let's see. Size 8 is, sorry about knocking in. It's about the size of my thumb. You can actually see. So I'm going to start working with a large brush. I'm mixing up a muddy color. And as most painters, I like to work dark to light. And the trick is when you're mixing, for me, I was trying to explain it to my student today. If you're using red, you don't want your colors to look red. If you're using yellow, you don't want your colors to look yellow. You always want to counterbalance with something else that will not make the color look basic, will not look like it came out of the straight from the tube, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one way to actually use red without making it look red is it's counterintuitive, but I'm sure you know this, is to add a little bit of opposite color of green to it. Right? So if you put a drop of green in your red, it will actually be much more interesting. So very quickly, what I try to do is to cover the area of the cavity, and I'm going to just draw it out so you can see what I'm thinking. This would be the area of the nose.
Somebody's asking a question if you can do these in other mediums like acrylics. And
if I can do it, or if they can do it.
If they can do it, yeah.
Yes, you can do this in any medium. What I'm about to teach you, you can do in pastels, you could do in watercolor, in any technique. So if you follow these steps, you'll be able to charcoal, they don't even need color. So this is very interesting. You can apply it to this knowledge to anything you like. I'm just particularly in love with oil. Okay, I'm going to draw. Notice that I'm just going to draw with paint. So I'm going to show you how the eye rises a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit more of my Van Dyke brown. And it's not symmetrical. The eye is not round. So here's the don't do. Don't do a little fish, I call it. Right? Don't and do. But you'll be surprised how many of these fishes that you see out there.
Yeah.
And another thing that I wanted to tell you about, that the tear duct right here. So the tear duct is not the nose of the fish, right? It actually sits on a different plane. You see how it kind of moves downward?
Yep.
It doesn't follow the eye. Do you know why, Jeff?
I do not know why.
Because if you had an infection in your eye, it would be drained out downward.
Mm.
If it went straight out like a fish, it would actually build up and you'd have a blown up infection, horrible eye infection. So this is an amazing eye. And the reason I tell you this anatomical design is that hopefully you'll never draw that way again. If you ever have, you'll never go back to that because you'll remember my voice and you'll say, no, I want to save my model from that awful disease.
Awful thing.
So you see, it cannot go like this. It would actually start changing plane, right? Literally changing plane. And it's its own shape. It sits towards the nose. And it's amazing how much more, how much better your eye would look if you keep that in mind. The other thing that I want to point out is a lot of people, this is very natural to notice the upper lid, right? So here's the upper lid. I'm drawing it right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's very common to forget to draw the bottom lid. And people make the eye end right here at the bottom, right? And then it looks like a cutout. So the reason we need both lids, because the eyeball is round. And by adding the bottom lid, you see, I haven't done anything, but already I have dimensionality, right?
Yep.
That roundness. I'm going to close it a little bit. The opening of the eye is not, when you talk, it's a little harder to concentrate, but it's not so open, right?
Yep.
All right. So I
think it's good to see too how you're using the edge of your brush to create these shapes. Yeah.
And also I try not to load my paint anything past the very beginning of the brush. Once the paint went to the middle of your brush, you get a mess. You don't have any control. So loading the brush is extremely important. So you notice that this is Rembrandt paint. I haven't gone back to the palette. I have enough on my brush just to go and go and go and go and actually look. It just would go and go and go and go and go and go. That's just one little bit of paint. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Okay, so I'm going to just indicate just a little bit where my pupil and iris is. I'm going to repaint it later. I like to grow. Here's what I don't like to do.
Could you tell us the colors again real quick, Zhenya? You had the Van Dyke brown, and what were the other ones?
So far, I've only used Van Dyke brown to start. Oh no, in the beginning, I kind of muddied it up a little bit. It's true. I used a little bit of Naples yellow, titanium white, a little bit of green. Which green was it? It was the green earth, and a little bit of a vermilion. So it made a brown. This is a brown, but this is not, it's kind of complex, right?
Yeah.
It's not out of the tube. Okay, so now I like to grow the pupil and the iris. What do I mean by that? I don't like to do this. I don't like to do iris and then pupil. You see this, right? That will never look good, right? So instead, I grow my iris. I'm just showing you like a little sample how my brush will move. And then within it, I will grow the pupil. It will look much more natural, right? That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it in color in just a moment. But for now, I'm just setting it up and showing myself where it's going to go. So I'm doing my underpainting. This is, of course, all a la prima at one go. If I let that painting dry, I could glaze it just beautifully as well. And I will also give you some pointers on how to paint the eyebrow, because the eyebrow is a very integral part of the eye, right?
Yep.
And you can really spoil your painting by making a beautiful painting and then just doing that for the eyebrow, right? You don't want to do that. All right, without too much more ado, let's go into, I start from the inside, because why do I want to start from the inside? I want to put the layers of skin on top of the opening the eye rather than painting the eye in. And I think that will become apparent in just a moment. So I'm going to go to the white of the eye. Jeff, what do you say I should put in that white of the eye? What do you see?
Oh, I think a cool gray.
A cool gray. So I'm going to mix my own cool gray, which will be from the Naples yellow. It will be from my beautiful turquoise blue and a little bit of that terra verde. And I'll throw in a little bit of the Van Dyke brown to actually make it grayish rather than completely powder blue. So I'm making
Zhenya, can we move the camera just a little bit to the right? I think it is, because the comments are kind of blocking your image there.
Is that good?
Little bit more.
That good?
That's good. That's better, I think.
I can't even, let's see, something appeared there. Some little guy. Let's see, what is that? Hopefully you could see now.
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to use this color.
Although now we've got a shadow.
I think it's this little guy there.
Oh.
Let me see. I'll try to reposition before I paint. So
okay.
Hang on.
There we go.
Go back a little.
Oh, I see. Yeah, perfect.
Right?
Perfect.
All right. Earlier on, I wanted to make it just bulletproof, just perfect for you. Okay. So gray, dark, you see? With a little tint of blue and green in it. Like you said, cool gray, but it's really not black with white.
Right.
I don't have black on my palette. The Impressionists forbade the use of black, and I took it seriously. It's a really odd thing. So here, what's really important, you want to make it uniform. You don't want to make it blotchy, because otherwise we won't believe later that this is the white of the eye. And we can make it a little bit darker, just a little bit, especially at the top, because the top lid is casting a shadow, right? So let me make that a little bit darker, just one value down, and you're going to see the blue in it. By the way, my canvas is not straight from the store. It's been gessoed 3 times, and then I added a ground on it with a kind of a neutral beige. Do you see it?
I do. It almost looks like the raw linen or raw cotton duck.
Exactly what I was trying to do. So it looks fresh again, but it's deceptive. And the reason I gessoed it 3 times, my brushes are just singing. They're just sliding smooth. There's no resistance. The color is looking its purest. It's just so fun. Okay, so now we're going to go a little bit into the iris. And you see I'm going to show this to you, that light blue, that's going to be painted last, because this is the result of the white that's entering the eye, coming through and escaping through it. So we're going to paint that effect at the very end, but we're going to start with a little bit of a darker color. And all right, so right over here, I'll take my turquoise blue and I'll put some brown on it again. It's so funny. I was teaching my student today, and for anything she asked, I was giving her the same color combinations. And then there, I realized it's just a matter of proportion, right? It's not a matter of color.
Yeah.
So it was funny. For light, I was giving her the same one, and for the dark, I was giving it. But of course, I know there's going to be more white or more brown or more red, and that's how you change color. So that was really funny today. I realized we're all made out of the same stuff. I need some more density, so I'm actually going to mix white into my combination, even though I'm going darker, to get a little bit more, less translucent. White is has a great body to it.
Yeah. I love how you're showing that you're starting and working out. I mean, I think so many folks make the mistake of just adding eyeballs in after the fact, and they look like
right.
That. Yeah.
I got a little bit of that dioxide purple mixed in there, which is the most awful color by itself, but mixes so gorgeous into shadows. So you see how it's just kind of naturally growing from the top lid down. And now we're going to grow a little bit of a pupil inside. So the way I'm going to grow the pupil, I'm actually going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue with alizarin crimson. That makes the most beautiful black without making it black. So I'm going to grow it once again here. From the top. And you see what I literally mean growing, right? It's like a little fetus that's starting to grow out. And with that alizarin crimson and my edge of my brush, I'm going to paint a little bit of the dimension of the upper lid. We actually see, just like the bottom lid, a little thickness, right? And here at the bottom, I'm going to begin showing the thickness. We're going to turn it later a little bit lighter. This is just for me to know where the thickness of the eye is. It has a dimension, right? Okay, so now let's do a little bit more shadows before we go into details. So we need, the eye sits in a deep cavity, right? So we need to set it into the dark. Right here.
Somebody just asked about the size of the brush. That's a number 8 brush, right?
This is a number 8. I think, for me, and I try to teach my students this way, bigger brush gives you more flexibility. Smaller brush actually limits you. Have you run into this before, Jeff?
Yes.
So it's
I've had students come with all these tiny brushes, and I'm like, oh.
How do you paint with that, right?
Yeah. I'd rather have a house painter brush. Yep. Yep.
This is little for me, right? Because I paint very large paintings usually.
I know.
So yeah, I'm with you on that, because you cover a quick territory in very little amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And
you can use the edge. I think that's the big people don't think about that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm going to show you some real amazing detail work with the edge. We will switch to size 6 brush for the detail work, and that will be my small brush. But I will tell you an anecdote about Dürer. So Dürer was, of course, a German Renaissance artist, and he traveled to Italy because it was considered, of course, that Italy was leading the world in painting in 1500. So he went to Italy to try to prove that they were just as good in Germany. And he showed his paintings. And I forget which famous artist. Did I ever tell you the story?
No, no, I love it. I love Durer, so this is
Okay,
great.
so he showed his painting, a very famous self-portrait he made, where he has these fabulous locks of hair.
Yes.
And the Italian artist, and now please reveal your secret brush. And Durer said, I don't have a secret brush. So they thought that he had shaved and kind of created his tool in a special way so that it would create that hair work, right? And he said, no, 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 it's a regular brush. And then they said, we don't believe you. So allegedly, he went on to do a demo, a live demo on Instagram. And he proved that he was using big old brush to make that amazing hair.
I know the painting you're thinking of.
Yeah.
It is a fantastic painting.
So I just love that story because he was trying to show it's not the tool, it was him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to create contrast. I don't know how it looks so far.
Looks great.
Because in front of my painting, I have a big camera hanging that I'm afraid to touch with my nose.
I know I have a big light shining into my face right now, so it's a little harder, to see the details. But
I'm going to show a couple of things that are really fun that animate the painting, that I'm restricting myself. You actually don't want to go to the light. The light is the dessert, right?
yeah.
So you want to restrict yourself as long as possible without painting without highlights. And that is extremely important, because if you can make it look good without the highlights, then by the time you add the highlights, the painting just starts to sing. And there is that moment. Why do I paint? There is that moment where it just looks like brushwork, and at one moment, hopefully today it will happen, it'll look like somebody's actually looking at me, and it's so addictive.
I know that moment of transition is miraculous, and it's magical. Yeah.
Show you a trick. Okay, so this is my favorite trick. So we put alizarin crimson in the corner of the tear duct, that part that we talked about, right?
Right.
And it looks really odd at first. Looks like that. Looks really odd. And I'm actually going to put it into the dimension of the eye here, where, right, you go inside. What do you call this part?
I don't know. The lower eyelid.
It's like inside of the lower eyelid.
Oh,
you know what
yeah,
I mean?
Yeah.
It's inside. So there
I'm
is
sure there's a name for it.
There's a thickness I'm trying to paint, but this doesn't look right yet. But if I go with unmixed white right into it, it will look just perfect. So basically, I'm not mixing on my canvas. I'm mixing straight onto the paint. So look what happens. Here, I'm just going to go dab, dab, dab. See how it's starting to look shimmery?
Mm-hmm.
And here, I'm just going to go on the inside. Just touch it up like this.
Nice.
Right? It's just like magic. So it's the excavation that we talked about of the layer below that brings out the effect. Now I'm going to clean my brush. I need to get a little bit cleaner here and organized. I need to bring it to a perfect edge. I'm going to dip it into my poppy seed and dip it into my white. And I need the white right at the edge, really at the edge. And I'm going to touch it just on the inside. Let me try that again. Right on the inside.
Oh, nice.
See the difference?
Yep.
So it actually feels like it's teary on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to fix a little bit the shape of my iris, because it's not round. It's kind of like elongated, right? So I'm going to fix that shape. I'm going to get rid of that light over there, because we're going to do a really cool trick. A really, really cool trick. So, one of the most important parts is...
You've got about 10 minutes, Zhenya. About 10
Great.
minutes.
I'm almost done. You'll see. It's going to come really fast. The iris doesn't have an outline. Do you see that? Oh, you can't see the picture, but it doesn't have an outline, so we don't want to see a line around it. And right here, I'm just going to bring a little light into the iris. 10 minutes is eternity.
It is.
I've done the hardest part.
It's looking wonderful.
Oh, good, good, good. So I never paint sitting down, so this is really odd for me.
I know.
You neither, right?
Uh-uh.
So this feels like really strange.
Whenever I have to do a demo sitting down, it's always awkward. It's like my arms, like I'm holding my arms up weird.
You see, I'm also dissolving the pupil as well. Okay, so now we're going to do something super cool. I'm going to load the white paint to hang off my brush. And I'm going to paint with what's hanging on it, not even touching the brush.
Ah, that is a great trick.
You see, I did not touch my brush at all.
Yeah.
And now I can actually perfect this. I can move. It's three-dimensional, so I can take parts off. I can really adjust it. I love that. Smaller, right? It's really cool. So for years, I would go in the museums and look at the old masters and think about how they did it. And I'd go to smaller and smaller brush, and I still couldn't do the precision with which they painted until I figured it out. It was kind of an amazing aha moment.
No, that's fantastic.
So the eye really starts to look. And in order to emphasize that it's looking, remember, the eye is translucent. So if, let me show you this. If the light is going in this direction, hitting with a highlight here, it has to escape at the diagonal directly across from the way it entered. So now we're going to make this eye look really radiant and see-through by adding the beautiful blue right across in the corner, right here. You see that?
It's marvelous.
So that's the real trick, to paint how it is. You see how it comes together, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll do a couple more things and then we can be done with this portion. And then I'll need my drink.
It's extraordinary. This is wonderful, Zhenya.
I promised you the brow. So basically the brow is very elusive. It is not separate from that cavity that we talked about. If we shave the brows, we would still see a shadow of the skeleton. Mm-hmm. So first we have to actually paint the location where the brow is going to go. We have to feel it as the part of the skeletal structure. So once we do that, and I kind of already underpainted that before, but I wanted to just point it out a little bit more. Then we can add the hair on top, but I'm going to show the trick how to do it. So I want to paint just a little bit of that highlight as we exit the shadow of the cavity out into the light, to the world right here, because it's going to brighten up the eye, right? Just right out here. And also down below, let's put like some shimmer in here. So this is my friend Nathan, very cool painter. I hope he watches one day and sees his eye appear up here. Amazing artist. So this is an artist eye, right? It's kind of cool.
There we go.
Okay, a little shimmer here too, right? As the light enters. Okay, the brow. I tend to distract myself so I don't go to the hardest part. All right, so I take my Van Dyke brown. This is great with a little purple, maybe even a touch of blue. And then it's counterintuitive. We don't paint the brow on top. We paint the brow at the bottom where it grows. It starts to grow at the bottom up. So it creates a kind of a gravity. So you start with the shadowy part and you kind of leave the top alone. I haven't painted the skin, so I can't complete that portion in our short time, but I'm just going to show you what to do from below. A kind of a gravity, right? And you do that and automatically the brow starts looking like a brow. You can mess it up with just a couple of strands, just a suggestion that there's a growth, and that's all you need. Automatically it starts looking like hair. And I wish I had time to show you the top, but that's going to have to do. Let's put some quotes and quotes eyelashes. It is taboo in art to paint eyelashes. So what do we do to make it? Because the moment if I paint them, they're going to look like dull, right? It's not going to look pretty. So we just extend the heavy line at the top. We just extend it a little bit with the flatness of my broom. For those who haven't been watching earlier, we were calling up brushes a broom.
The brushes are a broom.
Just make that just a little bit longer. I don't even need that. That was just a little, just that, right?
Yep.
That a little bit of that heaviness that gives you a sense of the lash. And here I want to close the eye at the bottom just a little bit with that same darkness. How does that look?
Looks wonderful. Fantastic.
And then if you are brave enough, so this is something for just the extra credit, you could take your painting and you could do things like that. You can actually start moving the paint, and you think that you're losing it, but it's actually creating a uniform, beautiful setting, and I can continue my steps and bring it up again, and then it'll look really great. But that's for another lesson. But don't be afraid to actually play with it.
Yeah.
So, Tadam, it's messed up right now, but I wanted to show. If you have a second, I could show you how to bring it back up.
We don't have that much time. They'll have to tune in the next time.
Yep.
To get that extra information. I think you've wowed everybody already.
I hope so. I hope so. I was shaking in my boots, even though I'm barefoot.
Somebody's going, oh no. They were scared just watching you do that.
But you see how it's actually mysterious. It's more interesting right now. So I would build upon, I would do that step, and then I would continue again. And I'll just do one little thing just so you don't feel so bad. I'll just bring back the
little one.
Just a little bit. And look look what happens, right?
Yeah.
Just with that, but it's more together. It's more sfumato or smoky. So it's a more interesting effect. So voila.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Zhenya. That was great. I mean, it's such an important part too, because that when we talk to people, we're typically looking at their eyes. The rest of the face becomes out of focus on the edges and sides. You know, our eye doubts around, but that's where we learn to connect. And getting those eyes that sharp just draws you in. That's what I love about Rembrandt paintings. I mean, I swear the eyes of his paintings follow you around the room. No matter where you're at, standing, in what position, they always seem to be looking back at you.
Yeah, if you've ever traveled to Delft and stood in front of the girl with the pearl earring, you've done this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I had a really embarrassing moment. So when everybody knows which painting I'm talking about, the girl with the pearl earring, the book in the movie that was made about her. It's a large painting. It's an unusual painting for Vermeer.
Yeah, for Vermeer,
right?
Yeah.
So it's basically life size. And you stand in front of it. At first, you're just in awe. And you're like, oh, my God, I've arrived here. And then there's that embarrassing moment where you realize, okay, it's been half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour. I have to turn around and leave. But you feel like she's watching you and you feel bad turning your back. So I actually had to apologize to her. And I said, I'm so sorry. I will have to come back. But it was really odd sensation.
Awesome.
We're talking now, if I hung up and said goodbye, it would be rude, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it is. It's magical what they've been able to create and what you were able to do for us today. A couple questions I wrote down while you were working. Somebody wanted to know if you had any art history books that you would recommend.
Oh boy, yes, yes, yes. God, there's so many. I would say it depends on whether you like to read or to look. Forward looking, Taschen has an amazing series of these complete works of artists, and they're huge table-sized books and incredible. I mean, if you can support Taschen, buy it from them. If you can go on eBay, you can buy it actually a $200 book for $40. But they do reproductions that are so high in detail and so large that you can really get close and both copy from it, almost better than museum, and enjoy and just spend times with this. So But for art history books, I have a whole library. Maybe one of my favorite books that I love, there's so many about Rembrandt. I don't know if you've ever read, there is a book called Rembrandt's Jews.
Mm-mm.
So there's every
Oh,
kind
you know,
of book.
I have seen that book. I haven't read it, but I've seen that book.
You won't be able to put it down. It reads like
Yeah.
detective novel because it tells you Rembrandt lived in Jewish quarters.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells you about his neighborhood and who was next to him. And it changes your mind, how you think about him. For instance, his next door neighbor was one of the most famous philosophers, Spinoza. So when you think about who he's opening the door and saying good morning to, and it maps out the whole city. So it's extremely interesting book, not at all highbrow, written very detailed but
it's
very
wonderful.
very
Yeah. Amsterdam was such a dynamic international city at that time, and I can only imagine all of the people that he was able to come into contact with. But I remember seeing that book. I think they have it at the Rijksmuseum.
Yes,
a copy of it.
It's one of the best books, and there's every kind of book written about Rembrandt. There's Rembrandt's nose, Rembrandt's eyes, but Rembrandt's Jews is the one you want.
That's the one you want. There you go. Look it up online. Recommended from Zhenya, and a great book. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Just always a pleasure to talk to you, and to be able to see you do the demonstration today was a super rare treat, and I know everybody appreciated it. We've been getting hearts and hand waves and everything from all of the folks out there. So thank you so much. Where can folks go to see some more of your work, Zhenya?
So I always point out, this lives on me and it's become part of my anatomy. So Z Art Academy, please visit me, zartacademy.org organization. We are an institution, and you'll find there lots of helpful links. If you want to learn more about me, to hear my lectures about art history or my painting demonstrations, or sign up for classes. I teach a lot on Zoom. So anywhere in the world.
You could be anywhere now, yeah.
Yeah, I teach people in London, in New York, in Indianapolis, everywhere. A shout out to my students. But also there are links for my favorite supplies. So if you want to know which paints I love, which brushes I love, which charcoal I love, it's called Resources. The tab is called Resources. So zartacademy.org. There's a lot there for you for free. And please send me letters too. If you want any questions, I'll answer it.
Definitely take a look at that website, folks. Tons of fun stuff. And plus, it'll take you to Zhenya's personal website, too, and you get to see more of her work, and just wonderful, wonderful work to see. Thank you again. For folks, fans of the Creator Studio Live, next week, we've got a great Facebook Live on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking with Terry Strickland, another fabulous figurative painter. So please join us then. In the meantime, keep on painting, and thank you so much, Zhenya. Take care, and we'll see you again soon. See everybody soon.
Thank you, Jeff. You're amazing.
Much appreciated. Bye now.